otherwise known as climbing hydrangea. This is a plant that likes partial shade, likes fairly rich soil, and again takes about 5 to 7 years before it begins to flower. There's a great one in London at Rainer Gardens on the pergola there, and this is a plant that flowers midsummer with large hydrangea-like blooms. Now we've talked about hydrangeas, we've looked at some of them, so you have an idea what the bloom looks like. This is a flat bloom backed up by shiny green leaves. You can see that the blooms are going to be quite large because this is the flower bud. These are the leaf buds down here. The flower bud is quite large and quite plump. So that's going to produce a fairly large bloom. But the easy identification characteristic is the exfoliating bark on it. You can trace it right back. Very similar to Hydrangea quercifolia, except that this is a vine. Right? So it's going to have long, flexible stems. And that's one of the things with vines that you should notice is that the woody tissue is often very, very flexible. Right? So one of the few vines that we can grow in really full shade. It takes a long while to get established. It needs, often on buildings, it needs some sort of support, as does the wisteria, because they lack the little suction feet to help stick them to the walls and such. You see here, you see this tendril here has got these little cups on it. This is from another vine here, Virginia creeper, but the hydrangea and the wisteria lack that sort of mechanism. There's a little tendril, but they don't have the little feet on them. So we're looking at this here is Virginia creeper. Have the little feet. They're also, back to the hydrangea. Hydrangea, a really nice vine. You can see the exfoliating wood here very, very clearly. Really nice vine for shade. Long time to get it established. And it'll stand out about that far from the wall. So it's quite a thick vine to have on the wall. I have it on my house because I have a very big wall on the north side. So it's in shade. It took a long time to get it established. And mine is held on by wire going through the brickwork right across the side of the building. There's a theory that vines are bad for buildings. Again, this is a question that might come up in your careers. The only reason that vines are bad for buildings is if the building is falling down. My house is 1841. It's got vines all on one side of it. And the only way that the vines can do any damage is if they get under woodwork, where they actually grow and expand and can push the woodwork out. Or they get into the cracks in the brick because there's no mortar in the bricks. Actually, vines have a benefit on buildings because they have a heating, cooling equilibrium. So in the summer, I've got a whole wall of vegetation on brick, on a solid brick wall, except for one window. So if you took the side of H building and covered that with vine, cooling costs in that building would be reduced because plants transpire, they transpire water. It's like you sweating. As you sweat, your body cools. It's the same thing. So your air temperature, this is a proven fact, if you measure the air temperature on asphalt compared to turf, the turf is going to be cooler. Because there's transpiration going on and there's an insulation factor, and it's the same for buildings and such. So be aware of that. The only way that vines can be really bad, if you go to England, go to Europe, and you can see buildings built in the 14th century, 15th century, and they're covered in vines. But they've got to be managed. A lot of people think you can put a vine on a building and you can forget about it. Virginia, or Boston ivy, which I hope to show you on the other side over there. Boston ivy, I have that on part of my building as well, part of my house. And I need to get up and prune it off 2 or 3 times a year because it gets up under the eaves and goes quite fast. As far as vine growth goes, Polygonum aberti is fairly fast. This is the fastest. This will put out probably 16 to 20 foot of growth a year.
Which one are you pointing
The
at?
wisteria.
Oh, wisteria.
The wisteria. The hydrangea is relatively slow. It grew that much this past year. Right, the wisteria, and it's already been pruned back once, But you can see that one tendril, or you see this tendril here. This was pruned at the start of the term, but that's close to what, 4 to 5 feet just on this one tendril, and it's already been pruned once. So
15 to 20 a year?
Yeah, 15 to 20 feet a year. So
it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
That's a loco.
The question for you guys is, which wisteria twists which way? There are several wisterias, and some of them can be identified by the way they twist, clockwise or counterclockwise.
Sweet. Oh.
Sorry?